Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be telling you guys a little bit about aperture. So what aperture is, it is the actual whole size of inside your lens, and that is how much light your lens actually lets in from the outside world into your camera sensor, and that determines alongside with your shutter speed and your ISO, the actual exposure of your photo either on your digital sensor or on film. So how film cameras and digital cameras work pretty much fundamentally the same on how exposure works with your shutter speed and your aperture and your ISO. That all determines on the exposure of your photo. But aperture is the actual size inside of your lens. So this right here is now a 1.8 aperture, and then if I move it all the way up to a 22, you can see it has gotten way smaller. So 1.8 is much of a bigger hole, and then a f22 is a much smaller hole. And since the hole sizes are different, the f1.5, which is the much bigger hole in your camera, it produces a lot more light into the camera image sensor or film. So that f.22, that much smaller hole in your camera lens, that produces a lot darker of an image because it gives you way less light to work with. Since it does make that hole of your lens much smaller, it does kind of play around with the depth of field as well. So the f1.8 will produce a much shallow depth of field. I have examples going on screen right now, and that kind of just gives you a nice blurry background. And then once you actually get into the smaller apertures, which is going to be the f22 in this example, that produces a much more everything in focus kind of image, and that's kind of something you can play around with. The aperture really determines your depth of focus and depth of field in your photos, so that is also a factor that you have to take in consideration when you're taking photos. So you can do a lot of cool things with aperture. Aperture is a really cool little neat trick you can play around with to actually get some cool different photos and actually play around with unique different photo styles. And it all depends on the scene that you're in. Not every single aperture is going to fit what you want, so that's why you got to play around with it. And you want to pick out a lens that will pick a good range of aperture for you to play with when you're actually shooting it. So my camera goes all the way from f1.8, so this is the FE 1.8 to 55 millimeter. This is the Sony Zeiss. I have a video up in the eye. This goes for all the way from f1.8 to f22 in the aperture scale, and it does give me a lot of variations of things that I can do. So it does give you that really nice creamy bokeh at the f1.8 level, and then it gives you really nice sharp images at the f22 level. So yeah, aperture is just one of those things you have to play around with, because it does give you a couple variations of images if you play around with it in different numbers, because it does either give you less light, more depth of field, less depth of field, and more in focus, less in focus. It all gives you these kind of things to decide what you want to actually do in your photo, and aperture is that great tool in your camera lens that determines how your image is gonna look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something about aperture in photography and how you can manipulate it to kind of get the images that you want. And see you guys in another video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one again. Hit that like if you did. Hit that subscribe and that notification button if you like this channel and the kind of videos that I do. And yeah, see you guys in another video. Bye.